On May 14, 2022, in a quiet, working-class neighborhood on Buffalo's east side, the air was filled with the sounds of an ordinary Saturday afternoon. Families moved through their weekend routines. The Tops Friendly Markets on Jefferson Avenue, the neighborhood's lifeline for groceries, was bustling. This supermarket wasn't just a store. It was a community hub where neighbors crossed paths, exchanged greetings, and built relationships that had lasted for decades. Generations of families shopped there. Grandmothers who once brought their children were now shopping with their grandchildren. For many in this part of Buffalo, especially its majority Black residents, Tops was not just where food was bought, it was where life happened. But by the time the sun began to wane that day, the store would be transformed into a scene of horror, heartbreak, and unspeakable violence that would leave scars for years to come. The man who brought devastation to this peaceful place was 18-year-old Payton Gendron, a young white man from Conklin, New York, a small, predominantly white town about 200 miles southeast of Buffalo. Gendron had been quietly and obsessively planning this attack for months. He had no connections to the Buffalo community, no personal history there. What he had instead was a chilling fixation on white supremacist ideologies that he had absorbed and amplified through the dark corners of the internet. In particular, he was influenced by the Great Replacement theory, a racist conspiracy that claims white people are being systematically replaced by non-white populations through immigration, social policy, and violence. It is the same ideology that had inspired the Christchurch mosque shootings in New Zealand in 2019, an event Gendron referenced multiple times in his writings. Gendron's descent into extremism did not happen overnight. Throughout his high school years, he was described by classmates as intelligent but socially isolated. He developed an early fascination with fringe ideologies and violence. During the COVID-19 pandemic, his isolation deepened, and he found solace and belonging in extremist online communities. In June 2021, during a school assignment, he submitted a disturbing essay about murder-suicide that alarmed his teachers. This led to a brief psychiatric evaluation, but he was released after just a day and a half with no further monitoring. This moment, in retrospect, was a missed opportunity, a warning sign that went largely unheeded. By early 2022, Gendron had immersed himself entirely in hate-filled forums on platforms like 4chan, Reddit, and Discord. He wasn't just a passive consumer of this content, he became an active participant. In a private Discord server that he meticulously maintained, he wrote thousands of lines detailing his ideological beliefs, tactical planning, weapons testing, and psychological state. He scouted multiple locations, conducted demographic research to find areas with the highest concentration of Black residents, and decided that Buffalo's east side presented the ideal target. He made several trips to the city in advance to survey the Tops supermarket and its surroundings. He logged every visit, every turn, every entrance and exit. The weapon he chose was a Bushmaster XM15 semi-automatic rifle, a model that had already been associated with mass shootings in the United States. He purchased it legally in New York State but modified it to accept high-capacity magazines, which are illegal under state law. In addition to his primary weapon, he carried a Savage Arms bolt-action rifle and a Mossberg 500 shotgun, neither of which were ultimately used in the attack. He also wore military-style tactical gear, including a bulletproof vest, helmet, and a body camera mounted on his head. His intention was not only to kill but to broadcast his actions as a form of white supremacist propaganda. On the day of the attack, he packed his car with weapons, ammunition, and his final written thoughts. Then, at around 9:30 a.m., he left his home in Conklin and began the drive to Buffalo. The journey took about 3.5 hours. Along the way, he reviewed his plan, listened to music, and prepared mentally for what he called his mission. By early afternoon, he had arrived. He parked near the Tops supermarket and waited. He watched as shoppers moved in and out of the store. After circling the area and performing last-minute checks on his gear and livestream setup, he parked in front of the store just before 2:30 p.m. At 2:28 p.m. he activated a live feed on Twitch, a popular platform used primarily by gamers. The footage was initially viewed by only a handful of people, but the broadcast, and the horror it captured, would soon ripple across the internet. The video began with a calm, sunny image of the store's parking lot. Gendron exited the vehicle wearing all black, armed with his modified rifle. On the barrel of the gun he had written phrases like, "White Lives Matter," and names of previous mass shooters. He raised the weapon and opened fire without warning. The first victim was struck while loading groceries into their car. 2 others were gunned down in quick succession. One tried to run. Another fell where they stood. Panic erupted, but the attack had only just begun. Gendron then stormed toward the entrance of the store. Inside, shoppers froze in confusion before realizing the danger. Among them was Aaron Salter Jr., a 55-year-old retired Buffalo police officer working as a security guard. Salter drew his weapon and fired at the assailant. The bullet struck Gendron's chest but was stopped by his armored vest. Gendron returned fire, killing Salter instantly. The security guard's bravery likely saved lives, slowing the shooter's advance just long enough for some shoppers to flee. What followed inside the store was a methodical, calculated massacre. Gendron moved through the aisles with chilling calm, aiming and firing deliberately. Almost all of the victims he chose were black. At one point he encountered a white employee hiding behind a counter. Gendron pointed his rifle but didn't shoot. "Sorry," he said before turning away. He was not shooting randomly, he was executing a hateful ideology. Within minutes, 10 people were dead and 3 others were wounded. The victims ranged in age from 32 to 86. They included a grandmother, a substitute teacher, a deacon, a former fire chief's wife, and a man buying a birthday cake for his son. Each life lost was a pillar in the community. Each person killed left behind families, friends, and histories of love and service. In less than 10 minutes, a neighborhood was shattered. Survivors recounted the terror in vivid detail. The sounds of gunfire, the smell of blood, the desperate attempts to hide behind shelves and counters. Some called loved ones to say goodbye. Others prayed silently as footsteps passed inches from their hiding places. Police arrived swiftly, responding to frantic 911 calls. As they surrounded the store, Gendron emerged and pointed his rifle toward his chin. Officers approached with caution, and after brief negotiations he surrendered. He was taken into custody without further violence. The live stream, meanwhile, had already been removed by Twitch, but not before segments of the footage had been captured and spread across other social media platforms. In the hours and days that followed, the world learned the full extent of what had happened. Investigators uncovered Gendron's writings, including a 180-page manifesto filled with white nationalist rhetoric. He wrote about wanting to inspire others to instill fear, and to serve as a catalyst for a broader racial conflict. He listed past mass shooters as his heroes and encouraged copycat attacks. His online activity painted the portrait of a young man consumed by hate and empowered by the digital age's darkest corners. On November 28, 2022, Payton Gendron pleaded guilty to state charges including 10 counts of first-degree murder, hate-motivated domestic terrorism, and attempted murder. On February 15, 2023, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. But the legal process didn't end there. In early 2024, the U.S. Department of Justice announced that it would seek the death penalty against Gendron. A rare step, especially under an administration generally cautious about capital punishment. The federal charges include hate crimes resulting in death, attempted hate crimes, and firearm offenses. Beyond the courtroom, the shooting had far-reaching consequences. Families of the victims filed lawsuits against several major tech companies, including Meta, Facebook, Amazon, Google, YouTube, Discord, and Reddit. These lawsuits accused the platforms of failing to curb the spread of hate speech and extremist content. The plaintiffs argued that these companies profited from engagement algorithms that amplified dangerous ideologies and radicalized young users like Gendron. New York State responded swiftly with legislative reforms. The state raised the legal age for purchasing semi-automatic rifles from 18 to 21 and banned the sale of body armor to civilians. New efforts were launched to monitor domestic extremism and online hate groups more closely. Despite these steps, the community and the nation continued to grapple with the broader implications of what had taken place. The 2022 Buffalo mass shooting was more than just a senseless act of violence. It was a chilling demonstration of how hatred can be cultivated, fed, and unleashed in the modern world. It was a reminder that domestic terrorism does not require international connections or foreign funding. It can grow in suburban bedrooms, fueled by misinformation, racism, and unregulated online forums. For Buffalo's East Side, the attack left a permanent scar. But in the face of unimaginable loss, the community has shown extraordinary resilience, holding vigils, rebuilding trust, and honoring those taken too soon. Local churches organized grief counseling and prayer circles. Muralists created vivid tributes to the lives lost, painting walls with messages of unity and remembrance. Community leaders began discussions around equity, access, and safety, demanding more than just thoughts and prayers, demanding real change. The names of the victims: Aaron Salter Jr., Celestine Chaney, Roberta Drury, Andre McNeil, Catherine Massey, Margus Morrison, Hayward Patterson, Geraldine Talley, Ruth Whitfield, and Pearl Young, now echo as both a cry for justice and a call to action. Their lives, legacies, and the tragedy of their deaths demand remembrance, accountability, and a collective vow: never again. Immediately after the shooting began, chaos erupted inside the Tops Friendly Markets. Shoppers scrambled for cover. Some hid behind shelves, others dropped to the floor, and many clutched loved ones in fear. Aaron Salter Jr., a retired Buffalo police officer working as a security guard, bravely confronted the shooter, firing his weapon and slowing the attack. Although Salter was killed, his actions allowed several people to escape. Outside, emergency calls poured in as neighbors and bystanders realized the horror unfolding. Police arrived quickly, forming a perimeter and cautiously negotiating the shooter's surrender. Inside, Gendron targeted mostly black shoppers, motivated by his hateful ideology, while sparing some white employees. His live stream, initially on Twitch, was taken down swiftly, but clips spread quickly online. The aftermath left the community devastated. Families waited anxiously for news, while local leaders and mental health workers mobilized to support survivors and those grieving. Buffalo's East Side held vigils and memorials, honoring each victim as a cherished member of the community. Investigations revealed Gendron's radicalization online and missed warning signs, sparking debates about mental health, gun laws, and the role of social media in spreading hate. New York State passed stricter laws on gun purchases and body armor, aiming to prevent future attacks. Despite the pain, Buffalo's East Side showed resilience. Neighbors supported each other, businesses reopened, and the community vowed to fight hatred with unity and compassion. The names of the victims, Aaron Salter Jr., Celestine Chaney, Roberta Drury, and others, continue to inspire efforts for justice and healing.